I just wanted to say thank you everyone who's attending the webinar, and to the Royal Forestry Society and the Royal Scottish Forestry Society, because without you guys this would not be happening. So I am Nellie de Gogel. I am the Head of Sustainability for Trainhugger. And I'm just going to give everyone a brief overview of Trainhugger and who we are and kind of how we came to be and why this is all happening. So just give me one moment as I share my screen. And hold on one second. All right. Goodness. Okay. So Trainhugger, our basic tagline to really drive home the point is, you book a train ticket with us, we'll help plant a tree in the UK. And obviously that we is Trainhugger and the RFS and the RSFS. So, using Trainhugger obviously will help plant trees and create habitats and do a whole bunch of other really great stuff across the UK, like protecting local wildlife, building up biodiversity. And then it also shows that users are kind of championing, nature recovery and climate action. So I'm going to do a brief little video, and I hope that you'll be able to hear it.
Here at Trainhugger, we'll make you a promise. Every time you book a train ticket through us, we'll plant a tree in the UK. You'll find the best fares on the Trainhugger website and our mobile app, where you can keep track of your tickets and the number of trees you've helped us plant. By working together, we can help the UK become carbon neutral. So let's plant millions of trees to make the country greener and the air we breathe cleaner. Go to trainhugger.com or download the Trainhugger app.
So obviously we have a very big ambition to plant, 10 million trees by 2025, which might sound a little crazy, but if you think about the rates of how people book train travel in sort of quote unquote normal times, in 2018 to 2019, there were 1.8 billion train journeys booked. So even if we, captured 1% of those, that's almost 20 million shares we could hypothetically help fund and plant in a year. I mean, that would be incredible.
Here at Trainhugger,
I'll just move on. So we offer the same ticket prices as our competitors. So right now, and obviously the recent sort of Williams report and the changes to the rail network might affect this in the future. But for now, train ticket prices are kind of set at a national level. So we offer the same ticket prices as train operators or Trainline, but we have a £1.50 booking fee, 50p of which goes directly into this grant that we've created with the Royal Forestry Society and the Royal Scottish Forestry Society. So I just wanted to give everyone a little run through about, the booking site and how it looks and how it works. So you kind of land here, you can book. I live in Rains Park, so it's always Rains Park. Find times and tickets, very easy, very simple. And ideally, it has all of the different routes available. It shows you the cheapest options. You can go faster, go first class, etc. So nothing new. It's everything you'd expect from a ticket booking engine. A sort of brief history about Trainhugger and how it came to be. Our two founders are old friends from school in Bristol, and one of our founders has worked in sort of the train travel industry for quite a long time, and they were looking to do something around train travel that was also good for the planet. And so this kind of linking a tree journey with a train journey with a tree just seemed to make so much sense in so that we could actually meet all these massive planting goals that the government needs to meet, and all these different things. Train travel is actually an amazing tool to potentially do this. So then what we offer, obviously, with the RFS and the RSFS, it's the trees, but it's also some green PR for potential partners like travel destinations, tourism boards. We can offer some data to certain partners and collaborators as well in terms of how many people are booking train travel and how many trees are being planted on their behalf, etc. And we also are working with a third-party company to, if sort of a business wants to officially offset their train travel, we offer that as well. But our trees we're not carbon offsetting. We're really focused on the message of these trees bring benefits to biodiversity, wildlife, climate resilience and pest resilience. And then I won't go into this, but this is kind of how the whole sort of booking fee into the grant works. So 50p from the booking fee goes directly into the grant, which then helps plant the trees. And then this is just Trainhugger as sort of a sustainable business. So we do try and align ourselves with, I mean, there's at least 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals, if you're familiar with those. And I won't go through all of it now, but obviously we kind of fit into each one of these. For instance, obviously good health and well-being, as I'm sure you all know, trees and woodlands are definitely beneficial to physical and mental health, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're also, in our first year of operation, we are a pending B Corp, which means we've actually changed our legal documents to protect people and planet before profit. And then once our sort of year period is over as a pending B Corp, we can get certified as a fully fledged B Corp and join, you know, a community of almost 4,000 companies across the world who are sort of doing business for good. And yeah, and then we're also launching sort of a Trainhugger business platform at the end of the summer, but I won't go too much into detail about that. And then that's basically it from me. So that's kind of an introduction to Trainhugger, and I will pass it on to Jen from the RFS to really go into the grant mechanics, how that all works. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nelly. Okay, so let's have a look at the actual grant itself. I'm just going to start my slideshow here. So just bear with me while I do that. There we go. So you should all be able to see my screen now. So this is a brand new grant for specifically for RFS and RSFS members, and it's called the Trainhugger Grants for Resilient Woodlands and Treescapes, which is a bit of a mouthful, but there's a reason for that. So what are we going to cover today? We are going to have a look at what the grant is for, who can apply for the grant, the application process, what happens if we award a grant, and where you can find out some more information. So our new grant, the purpose of this grant is that it helps people and organisations to plant trees that are going to survive and thrive into the future. We want these trees to create better, more resilient treescapes for our environment, for people, and for our economy. And those 3 things are very important. As Nelly said, for every Chain Journey book through Trainhugger, 50 pence will be donated to help our RFS and our SFS members plant trees. So the idea is that together we create a network of climate change, pest and disease resilient woodland and treescapes right across the UK. This grant scheme has been designed in consultation with our members. So hopefully we have tried to take on board as much of the feedback that you've given us about what a new grant scheme should do and how you would want it to work. So projects that we support, we want to be quite wide-ranging in the projects that we support. And so for this reason, you can use this grant for new woodland creation, restocking, underplanting, enrichment planting, urban or parkland schemes, hedges, shelter belts, or anything that helps to create resilient landscapes. The key is that we're looking for the right trees in the right places with the right ongoing care. And you can use this grant to take risks or innovate with new species or mixes or different silvicultural techniques. And we're looking for projects particularly that will help to introduce diversity, and that diversity could be diversity of tree species, structural diversity, or even genetic diversity. So what can't you apply for? So we're looking for projects that are doing things differently to help us create this resilient network of woodlands and treescapes across the UK. So we're not going to fund the same old, same old. You can't use this grant just to plant or replant single species woodlands or trees that in some way don't make a positive contribution to our fight against climate change, pests and diseases, or diseases. Sorry, you don't have to address all 3 of those issues. They are quite big issues all in their own right. You can't apply for this grant if the cost of your trees is fully funded by another grant, but we'll have a look at what you can and can't use it with a little later on in this presentation. Unfortunately, we can't accept applications from central government agencies either. So who can apply? So if you're a member of either the RFS or the RSFS, then you can apply. We would love corporate members to apply. We'd love local authorities, but as I said, not central government agencies to apply. We're looking for schools and other charities. If you're a member, you can apply. If you aren't already a member, you can join us by visiting our websites. You must own all of the land on which you'd like to plant the trees, or if you're not the landowner, you must have the landowner's permission to plant the trees and apply on their behalf. And your scheme must include a plan to plant between 500 and 20,000 trees. So when to make your application? This was decided with lots of feedback from our members who said that they hate application windows and they need fast decisions. So there is absolutely no application window for this grant. You can apply at any time of the year. Applications will be assessed on a first come first served basis though. So once the money in the pot is gone, we can't reopen grants until we get some more money from our partners at Trainhugger. We aim to give everybody a decision within 6 weeks of us receiving your application. Hopefully you'll think that that's quite a quick turnaround, and hopefully that should be quick enough for most people to get ready to plant in the planting season that they're looking forward to. In order to claim your grant, you must have all of your positions in place. But if you don't have all of your permissions yet, but you'd like to test your ideas with us, you can submit a stage 1 application. That is a partial application where you test your ideas and we'll tell you whether or not your project is eligible. But remember, you won't be guaranteed your grant unless you sign a grant contract with us. So we can't issue a grant contract until a full application has successfully been submitted and gone through. How do we assess applications? So we're looking at the quality of the projects that are put forward. We wanted to keep the grant application process really non-restrictive, and we wanted to make sure that people are able to put forward a really wide range of projects with innovation and new ideas. So we haven't been prescriptive or wholly prescriptive about the grant criteria that we are marking you against. But we will look at your ability to make a positive contribution to creating this network of sustainable woodlands and treescapes. And so we are looking for trees that are going to be planted for adaptation or mitigation for the negative effects of climate change, pests or diseases. Projects should have positive effects on the environment, people or woodland economies in the UK. And we'll also assess your ability to deliver the project within the agreed timeframes and your ability to care for the trees as they grow. So if we award you a grant, remember that grant will not be secure until you've signed and returned our standard terms of grant. Now you can view our standard terms of grant on our website. You just need to go to www.rfs.org.uk/Trainhugger to download all the relevant documentation and application pack. You'll need to submit evidence that your trees will be supplied in order to claim your grant. So you'll need an invoice, or you'll need to write us a letter, or you'll need some kind of statement from your supplier to show that the trees are actually on the way and that you're committed to planting them. At that point, you can claim your grant. It's important to note that we can pay the grant before you've bought your trees in order to free that money up if people need it. So you'll also need to be prepared to let someone inspect the planting up to 4 years after the date that you've claimed your grant money. The reason for this is just in case things go wrong, or we want to revisit the planting to see how it's going. Perhaps you've submitted something really experimental and we want to come and have a look and see how that's getting on, and perhaps share that learning with your agreement with the rest of our members. If you do fail to make good progress with the project, we might reclaim the grant, and I think that's fairly standard in all grant systems. And all grant recipients will be invited to join the RSFS Monitor Woods programme. We have representatives from the Royal Scottish Forestry Society here with us today on the panel. So if you have any questions about Monitor Woods, please do put them in the Q&A. So you are able to use this grant with other sources of funding. But to fulfil our obligations to our partners, we need to make sure that each 50p of funding from this grant can be attributed to one tree in the ground. So you can use this grant alongside other sources of funding if you aren't receiving any additional external funding towards the cost of purchasing the trees. So for example, if any of the other grants or funding that you're receiving is for deer fencing or tree guards or ongoing care, then you can absolutely apply for this grant to go towards the cost of your tree. Or if that's not the case, then the grant that you would receive from us should constitute no less than 51% of the total funding you'll receive towards the cost of purchasing trees between the start and end date of the project. And I know that that sounds slightly complicated, but essentially we want the Trainhugger grant to be the primary grant for the tree that is going in the ground. So where can you find out more about this new grant scheme? You can find out more on our website, which is there for you on the screen. Here you will find the application form, which was published this morning, a grant guide, our standard terms for grants, and a grant information document, as well as some frequently asked questions from the people that we've tested this idea with. If you still need help, you can email us, but if you can try and remember to put Trainhugger in the subject line, that will help us to find your queries and get them sorted really quickly. Without Trainhugger in the subject line, things might get lost and it might take us a little bit longer to get back to you. So thank you all for joining us here today. I'm going to open up to Wendy, who's going to be looking at some of your questions, and we will open up to the panel to try and answer some of those for you.
Okay, hello everybody. Please don't be shy about putting your questions in the Q&A, and we will try and get to them all. I have a few which have already been submitted, so I will also include those. I'm going to start, I think, with the question that's come in from Joe Jervis. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Can the planting take place across multiple sites, e.g. woodland and parkland, under one application? I don't know, Jen, would you like to field that one perhaps?
Absolutely, yes. So you can tell us about planting across multiple sites. We'd like the project to have cohesiveness, so there should be some link between the sites in that you're perhaps trying new different silvicultural techniques or different species mixes. But absolutely, you can include multiple sites on one application. You will have to tell us where all of the sites are though.
Lovely. I have something else which was submitted about eligibility, and I think you may have covered this, but questions are around would agroforestry count, would short rotation coppice, Christmas trees, orchard trees, green burial sites, would all those be looked upon favourably?
Okay, so it depends on the scheme. So absolutely, we're interested in seeing your agroforestry schemes and your innovative different schemes for planting. If you're looking at doing the same old Christmas trees, where you plant a monoculture of Christmas trees and then chop them all down at Christmas time, then that's not the kind of thing that we're looking for. We're looking for innovation, we're looking for experimentation, and we're looking for resilience. So you need to show a really strong resilience element to your planting scheme.
Lovely, thank you, Jen. And following on a little bit from that and Christmas trees, are there any species that are not allowed? How would you decide? There's one question here from Brian Elliott. Will it fund the planting of eucalyptus trees in a plantation, for instance?
Do you want me to take that one again? There are no species that we've ruled out, but again, you have to show the resilience aspect to them. We have said that we will not fund monoculture planting. So you have to consider diversity, especially in species, structure, or genetics, if that's the way that you'd like your project to proceed. There are lots of different innovative new projects that we want to see coming forward. So again, it's very important to consider the site and site suitability. For larger schemes over 5,000 trees, we're asking people to provide an ESC data report to show suitability of the species that they've chosen. And if they choose species that are not included in ESC, then there needs to be a good reason for that, and we need to have that rationale included with the application. We understand, for example, some of our members in Northern Ireland do not have ESC data, so we're asking those people who do not have access to ESC data in their area to provide a suitable report that describes why they've chosen the species that they've chosen.
Fabulous. There's a lovely question here, a topical question from John Morris. Great scheme, but how will you ensure trees are not planted in the wrong places, i.e. valuable natural habitats such as heaths, bogs, chalk grassland or meadows? And I don't know if, Jen, you want a breather or whether you want to take that one, or Wilma, whether you would like to come in on either of those. Hands up, who will take that one?
Yeah, I'll come in on that. I think it's important that partly one of the reasons why this has been partnered with the RFS and the RSFS is we are looking for people who have already got experience managing trees and will be used to doing that sort of thing. And certainly we would be expecting people to be very aware of habitats, what the grant schemes call constraints, as part of their preparation and some of the information, the background information that they would provide. Okay, now sort of associated perhaps with that is a question that was submitted. If my application is not accepted, will you be giving reasons why, and will there be an opportunity to resubmit or appeal? I don't know if that touches on the same topic, but perhaps we could cover that.
Absolutely. So if you do apply and your application is not successful, we reserve the right not to give feedback on every application, just because that's a massive administration task for us. We're obviously quite small charities, and so we want to divert our best efforts into getting the best schemes planted as quickly as possible. If you are interested in resubmitting your scheme for a future round of funding, so perhaps you didn't quite get in this pilot project, but then more money becomes available from Trainhugger as we go on with this partnership, then you would be welcome to resubmit your application. If we don't want you to resubmit your application, we will tell you, and we will tell you why.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to grant funding now, if I may. We've got a couple of questions. One here from Dan Camerata Hall. Apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly. And another from Stephen Lees. So Dan is asking, if I have a grant already paying for most of the trees, will Trainhugger pay for the remaining trees? And on a similar theme, Stephen Lees is saying, so a countryside stewardship woodland creation grant would not be eligible for much funding. It offers 128 per tree, but not enough to to cover the full costs. Who would like that?
Okay, so thanks for those questions. We have discussed this at length. So this grant isn't going to be for everyone. If you can get a better deal from another grant scheme, then absolutely go ahead and do that. The idea behind this grant scheme is that it is simple to apply for, it is quick in that we give you a decision, and that it should be easy to manage without over onerous reporting requirements to deal with. We'll also be placing no specific covenants on the land that you apply for. So the tree planting grant is fixed at 50p, and if you are getting more than 50% from elsewhere towards the cost of your trees, you couldn't use this grant, unfortunately. If you have a grant for some trees on your scheme, but you'd like to include additional Trainhugger trees, then that's absolutely fine. So long as we can attribute 50p from this grant to a tree in the ground, then that's absolutely okay, and you're welcome to apply. We do need to reiterate that the additional trees need to bring some resilience aspect to that project. So make sure that that comes across really strongly in your application.
Thank you, Jen. While we're on the topic, Elizabeth O is asking, can you use it to plant trees that have been grown by yourself or by community nurseries? I'm assuming that's back to the 50p a tree invoice question.
So absolutely. So the flat rate of the grant is 50p a tree, regardless of how much you pay for your tree, or even if you buy your tree at all. Because we're interested in innovation, we are accepting applications where people have grown their trees from seed, or where they are replanting or respacing natural regen. So these schemes are absolutely eligible, but you will need to show us how you plan to protect and care for these young trees. And that will be all part of the application process. So we will consider how well these trees will be protected as individual trees growing.
Thank you, Jen. I'm going to give you a bit of a rest now, because I think this is a question for Simon or for Wilma. A question in from Simon Stewart with a question mark. All sites invited to join Monitor Woods schemes?
Yeah, we'll have a look at the sites that are getting done as part of the process for the application. And if we find something that's interesting and innovative, we would quite like possibly to include that in our Monitor Woods scheme, which effectively records the information and there's regular site visits to the site to see how progress grows. I noticed people were talking about growing eucalyptus, which is something we're quite interested in Scotland. And I think this is a wonderful grant for people trying different species and seeing how far up the country we can go with them. We've got to find diverse species to grow. Let's keep on trying different things. Eucalypt's a good one, so we would welcome that. So I'm maybe answering two questions in one there. Monitor Woods is a possibility, depending on what's happening on the site, and welcome the grant for growing different species in different parts of the country to see how they perform.
If I could chip in as well, one of the things we're looking for is what's called knowledge exchange. And the Monitor Woods scheme is one way of achieving that. And certainly perhaps aggregating some of these schemes rather than creating a single Monitor Wood might be one way of doing this.
Thank you. A couple of questions here on protecting trees. One from Caroline Gooch. Will there be any stipulation that trees must be protected, e.g. from damage by deer browsing? And there was actually incidentally an earlier query about would the grant cover deer protection? And I think you've probably already answered that bit, but is there a stipulation that they need to be protected? And then another from D. Morris can the planting be mixed densities with close groups and open spaces without plastic tubes and accept some damage as part of the project? I know we're talking about survive and thrive, so here we go.
Okay, so tree protection is again something that we've spoken about at length when we were designing this new grant scheme. So if your trees aren't going to be protected in the traditional ways, for example, with deer fencing or with tree tubes, then you'll need to tell us why. So what is it that you are trying to find out? So are you experimenting with different spacing, different species mix, no tree tubes, different tree tubes, using wool? All of those sorts of things would be eligible. Unfortunately, the grant is a flat rate of 50 pence per tree, and to be able to attribute that grant to a tree in the ground, we have to say that other costs, such as the costs of tree protection, are not eligible under this grant. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Jen. The next question is possibly for Nellie and myself. Do the public get information on where the trees are planted? Will the sites of planting be featured on your website, the RFS or the RSFS websites? So Nellie, do you want to go first, and then I'll talk about our hopes?
Absolutely, absolutely, Wendy. So on our side, obviously, we welcome projects that will allow us to talk about them in a public way on our site and in our, social media and as part of our newsletter, because for us, that is really how our users can then link with the impact that they are helping to fund, essentially. So absolutely, we will put as much information as we are allowed, as you allow us to, on our site, in terms of any level of detail. What we can also do is sort of from a higher level perspective, we will be talking about, we've helped fund X amount of trees in this region or this area as well. So that's not really going into a lot of detail about the individual projects. But as I said, as much as we can share about the projects that you allow us to, we absolutely will.
And I'll just add a little bit from the RFS and the RSFS point of view. We are about sharing knowledge. We hope that there's going to be some fabulous, absolutely fabulous projects. And we would like to pick one or two and follow those through in different regions, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, in England and Scotland. Anything that we do and publicize would only be with your permission. Nothing would ever go out without your permission that identified you. So we might be looking for blogs, we might be looking for videos, we might be looking to follow you through the first 5 years, maybe even the first 10 years. And we hope that if you are asked whether your project, you would like to feature your project, you would say yes, and we'll look to follow that through and give others that information about what you're doing, what's worked and what may not have worked for you. That's just as important to know. So I'm hoping, David, that puts your mind at rest or excites you, one or the other. And I'm going back now to the detail of the grants, if I may, for a minute. A question again from Dan Camerata Hall. Would Trainhugger pay for replanting a site after a selective fell?
Absolutely, yes, and this is one of the great things about the Trainhugger grant. So Restock is eligible. Again, you'll have to strongly demonstrate the resilience element to your new planting, but if you are felling and then you are planting trees, this grant, you can definitely apply for this grant, especially if you're using innovative or new species mixes or techniques.
Thank you, Jen. A question here from Henry Studholm. When you say you will not plant a monocultural planting, do you take into account surrounding forest? For instance, you might be replacing dead ash in a mixed forest. Simon, Wilma, Jen, one of you. Jen's disappeared, so Simon or Wilma. If either of you could take that on while Jen reconnects, that would be fabulous.
Yeah,
Firstly, I was going to come in. I was going to say hello to Harry Studholm, who I know from previous existence. And I think it goes back to this thing about resilience, and it's probably also about scale. But so long as the new planting can be demonstrated to be a suitable, resilient replacement for what's been felled, then that sounds to me as though that would be eligible.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Wilma. And it actually comes back to Dan's previous question about selective felling, going through a woodland. Effectively, if we're taking out diseased ash or up in this part of the country, diseased larch, and going through doing felling. Replanting with a more resilient species, I think, would fit in perfectly with what's being proposed here. And being slightly parochial in Scotland, we've got a very poor restructuring grant. And we do see an opportunity here for not just where selective felling's been done, but also where species are growing very poorly. I can think of plantings from the 60s and 70s, which are quite atrocious, that are coming up for being clear felled now, and looking to put a more resilient and more suitable species back into these areas would be beneficial.
Right, thank you. I have a couple of questions here, which are a bit lighter, and perhaps Jen and Wilma, you might want to come in on the first one here. Is how long do I have to have been a member, and how long do I have to stay a member after receiving the grant?
Okay, that is a good question. So you have to be a member to apply, but there's no set time how long you should have been a member before you apply. We are looking for people who do want to be RFS and RSFS members. So if you do join because you want to apply, we want to keep you, and we want to make sure that you're taking advantage of all of the benefits that our organisations have to offer. As a minimum, we would expect you to remain a member for the duration of your grant, which is usually around 2 years, but hopefully if you join now, we'll keep you as a member for much, much longer.
Wilma, do you want to add anything, or Simon, to that one?
I think one of the benefits of this to both the societies is raising the profile of what we do. And very grateful to Trainhugger for using us as their partner in this, and hopefully it will bring more people in. And both societies do a tremendous amount improving the awareness and knowledge exchange in forestry, and this is a really interesting part of that work going forward.
So sticking with the theme of membership, Robbie Barnes is asking, as a forestry consultant, would my membership suffice for applying for a grant on behalf of my client, or does my client have to become a member in order to receive the grant on their property, even if I am applying for them?
So that really does depend on who is going to be responsible and accountable for delivering the objectives of the project. So if you as the consultant will be responsible for managing the woodland as it's planted and as it establishes, then it's absolutely fine for you to be the member and not for the landowner. If it's the landowner's responsibility and accountability for delivering the project, then we would like them to become the member so that they have access to all of the learning and all of the benefits of our organisations.
Okay, so sticking on that theme, and this isn't really a question, it's more a comment, I think, from Stephen Lees. I'm a member and act as an agent for quite a few landowners. It would be fine to ask the landowner to join as a condition of grant aid, then up to the RFS and presumably the RSFS to show value for continued membership. So I think we'd all say, yes, we'd agree with that. A little cheeky one here for Nellie, please. Nellie, there's one question came in. Will there be a discount on train tickets for RFS and SRFS members?
Oh, wow. You know, I wish I could say absolutely there would be, but in this first year of operation, unfortunately, we just cannot. Our margins are so slim. I mean, even myself, I don't get any sort of discount on train tickets. But I mean, you know, it's definitely something we would love to look into in the future for sure, because you're obviously such valuable partners in this. So yeah, unfortunately not at the moment.
So that's your answer there, but please do tell people to book all their train tickets at trainhugger.com.
And sorry, Wendy, just to jump in on that. So we did, our website for booking tickets is live. It went live a few weeks ago, and then we will have an app in the Android store and the Apple store. It's just being doubly approved right now, so hopefully the apps will go live by the end of this week, so that we'll be fully live to be booking all your tickets by the end of this week.
Lovely. And I have one question here looking ahead a little bit. We're talking about the first 80,000 trees in this partnership. A question here is, will there be a difference in criteria between the initial pilot scheme and the longer term partnership which is being talked about?
So I think the answer to that question is yes, there is likely to be some difference. So as Wendy said, we're very lucky to have funding for a 1-year pilot to plant 80,000 trees with our members. We're seeking to continue this partnership into the future, and we're hoping that Trainhugger is going to be an absolute roaring success, and that as we go forward they'll be able to release the money to our members to plant lots and lots of trees. So it's going to be important for us to collect information from our members about how they found the application process, including whether or not they were successful. And particularly those people who go forward and are successful in securing grants from us, how do they find the application process? How do they find the delivery of the project? Are we doing all of the right things, and are there things that we could be doing better? So this time next year, we could be looking at a slightly different grant scheme, but the principles, I believe, will remain the same, but will be constantly under review. So keep your eyes peeled for more.
And one slightly sad question here: what happens if the trees die? I assume that means do you want your money back?
Yeah, so we recognise that sometimes trees do die, and especially if you're being experimental, we might even be expecting some quite high mortality rates for some of the more experimental projects that we go forward and fund. The point where it becomes unacceptable is when the trees have died through neglect or negligence. And so we do reserve the right to reclaim the grant if we believe that the trees have just been left and not been properly cared for, or cared for in the way that you set out in your application.
And I was just having, okay, sorry, Dan Camerata Hall again. Is there a timescale on the grant? Do you need to plant the trees in the same year as applying?
That's a very good question. So no, you don't have to plant the trees in the same year that you apply. We're giving every successful applicant 2 full planting seasons, and we're defining the planting season as the 1st of October to the 30th of April. So depending on when you apply, you'll have up to 2 years to plant your trees. But yes, definitely you will have 2 full planting seasons.
Thank you. I have one more submitted question, and if anyone else would like to ask a question of the panel, please do put your question in the Q&A box, and we'll try and get to that before we finish. So the last submitted question that I have here, and I'm not sure who's going to take this one, is: can I use the funding retrospectively for a scheme which received no funding but meets all the resilience criteria?
Okay, so I guess this is me again. So if you've applied for a grant from somebody else and been turned down, then you can absolutely apply for the Trainhugger grant. We're happy to look at projects that other people have turned down for funding. You will need to demonstrate that really strong resilience element to your project, though. That's the only prerequisite for that.
If I could just chip in, I may not have quite understood the question. Once the trees are in the ground, no, you can't apply because there's no additionality there.
Thank you for that, Wilma. And Dan's asked a subsequent question, and I think we can answer that. When does the grant application go live?
So grants are open now. You should find everything that you need to apply, including the application form and grant guide, on the internet. If you need to go and have a look at that, you can follow the link that was in your email to the webinar, and I'm sure Claire can post the link to the information in the chat if we ask her nicely to.
Okay, has anyone else got any questions? If so, please pop them in now. Otherwise, I will turn back to Jen and to Wilma, perhaps, to close the meeting. Anyone else? Oh, you're not quick enough on the draw. Okay, go back to Wilma. Wilma, would you like to say a few final words? And if something pops in, I'll bring it up before we pass to Jen.
Yes, just to summarise, it's been really interesting seeing how many questions there are and the amount of interest there is. It's a really interesting, innovative approach to grant funding. Just picking up on the previous point, the information is on the RFS's website, and we will be directing people to their website. You know, we're delighted to be partners in this, but to simplify things, it's being fed through the RFS. There will be links from the news release that's on our website, but the bulk of the information is on the RFS's website. So really interested morning, and we'll see what comes forward as people start feeding in applications.
Thank you. And Monica Sanders has just got her question in here. I think we may have touched on this earlier. Can one make more than separate applications for different sites? Can one make more than separate applications for different sites?
If this is a question about can you make multiple applications for the same site, then yes, you can. But please be aware that we're looking for the best resilience project. So we'd rather that people just put their best resilience project forward first. But there's absolutely nothing to stop you putting multiple applications in for the same site.
Right, thank you so much. I think that's the end of the questions. So I don't know, Nelly, do you want a last quick word before Jen wraps up?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to say thank you to the panelists, but really thank you to the Royal Forestry Society members and the Royal Scottish Forestry Society members, because again, without you applying for this grant, this wouldn't work. And initially it's the 80,000 trees, but obviously if we're a success and hopefully as we grow, it will be much more funding available on a continual basis. So I'm just really excited to see how this all works out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nelly. And Jen, one final word or a few final words from you, I think.
I'd just like to add my thanks to the panel and to all our wonderful members, especially those of you who are watching now who helped us develop the grant and provided your feedback at those early stages. So thank you all. I really hope to see lots of amazing applications from you all. I hope that you can find everything you need. If you can't, do get in touch with us. Claire will be emailing you all with a link to this video so that you can rewatch it if you need to, or so that you can see the slides again if you need to. But I'd just like to say thank you all for your time this morning.